take a gloomy, dissatisfied woman. Then, in a very private experience between husband and wife, he gently places her in our female improvement system.
Hello readers, I'm Amy. Today we are going to talk about The Husbands by Chandler Baker. In my more recent-ish wrap-up, I said that I read The Husbands, but I didn't want to talk about it during that video because I wanted to dedicate a little bit more time to it. Just a note that it's actually been probably 2 or 3 months since I finished that book, but I'm going to do my best with this review. It's going to be I'm going to review the book, but it's also going to be a little bit more of a discussion on feminism and, like, kind of how I felt about myself and my feminism when reading this book. So, The Husbands by Chandler Baker, we have a married couple with a child, and the wife is also pregnant. And a lot of people have been comparing this to The Stepford Wives. Now, I already have a review for The Stepford Wives. It is up in whichever corner. I don't remember where the little I is, but I did review that book, and I do think that it is very, very similar. It just switched it on us. Instead of The Stepford Wives, in this case, we have The Stepford Husbands. So our main character ends up at this dinner party, like making new friends with these people who live in a suburb that she wants to move to, and her husband is unsure about, because she figures, well, if we get to know the people, if we get to know the area, maybe I can talk him into it. And she notices some interesting things about these husbands. And if you are familiar with the idea of the Stepford Wives, you probably have an understanding of what she finds a little weird. So about the married couple, this is where it gets kind of tricky for me in thinking about this versus thinking about the Stepford Wives, because in the Stepford Wives, we're like, wow, this is really sexist. You're trying to make women into these, like, housewife porn stars for you. Like, that's not okay. And in the Stepford Husbands, here we're trying to make the husbands do so much more stuff that stereotypically they don't generally do. Is that also sexist? That's a whole conversation I probably can't get into. But regardless, we have this married couple. They have a kid. They have another one on the way. And both of them work. I don't remember what the husband does, but I believe the wife was a lawyer in this book. And despite both of them being parents and both of them having full-time jobs, the wife is the one who does her full-time job, tries to pick up extra work where she can, but also having to take off time for her own doctor's appointments and take off time for her daughter's doctor appointments. And she's the one who makes lunch, who makes dinner. She makes sure her kid has breakfast and gets a bath on a regular basis. She's the one who picks up the house, and she realizes she's not super happy with this arrangement. She's still very much in love with her husband. He's her best friend in the world, but he's simply not pulling his weight around the house. I don't know how much of a spoiler review this really is, because if you're familiar with the Stepford Wives, you're probably going to be pretty familiar with the storyline of this book, and you're going to know what happens whether or not you've read the book. But it just had me thinking. I think in my own situation, I do tend to do a little bit more of the housework, and would I like my husband to help out? Yeah. But also in our situation, he's the one who does work more hours and who has a better paying job, and I'm usually the one who happens to be home for a lot of the day, who doesn't work as many hours for various reasons. So honestly, it makes sense that I would do more of the housework because I have a little bit more downtime than he does. That's not to say that he doesn't help out. My husband is very helpful around the house. This is just our particular situation. But if my husband was acting to kind of the more extreme side that I feel they were acting in this story, I think that I would do it. I think that in that case, if we had a kid and I felt like I wasn't being supported at all around the house, I think I would make my husband into a Stepford wife. Just being honest. Does that make me a problem? Possibly. Like, I don't think that we should be having to force people to change who they are. I do think that the husband in this story really needs a talking to and needs a therapist and needs just a wake-up call to all of the work that his wife tries to do around the house. But also we see that she really loves him, and it's like, if you love someone, don't change them. Maybe this isn't the relationship for you. Maybe you need to shop around for someone who can be in a relationship where they pull a little more of the weight. But on the other hand, we do live in a world where we are trying to actively change things. We're trying to get people to understand that not all women are cut out to be housewives. A lot of us want to have careers. We want to have the big job where we can like rise up the ladder and make a lot of money, and we want our husbands to be home with the kids sometimes, you know? Being in a world that we live in that's like that, where we are actively doing these things, I think it changes the perspective on this a little bit, where it's like, it seems a little more acceptable to me that she would be trying to get her husband to help out around the house more. Whereas when you have like a Stepford Wives situation, it's like you have to be a housewife, you can't have a career, you have to have sex with your husband every single night, and it has to be really, really good. And it's like, in every gender category and every sexual identification, there are people with various sexual needs and sexual appetites. And it's been stereotyped that women are not particularly sexual beings, but that's not really true. I know several men who are not particularly sexual beings, and that's okay. The Stepford Wives was more, I think, a reflection of how the world has seen women and kind of the problems with seeing them that way. And then The Husbands by Chandler Baker is more of a reflection on where we're still at and why we need to change things. But yeah, this book just made me feel a little weird about my feminism. I'm like, if I don't want to do as much housework, if I want to have a career, if I need my husband to support me in different ways, I don't think that makes me a terrible person, but it did make me question myself a little bit. That said, I don't have kids. We're not ever planning on having kids, so we're not in the same situation as the couple in the story was. At the moment, we don't have any major disabilities that we have to help each other manage. We're in a pretty simple relationship for right now. That said, if I end up in a situation where I need extra help around the house, I hope that I can trust my husband to pick up the reins and help me out. And I would think that if he was in a situation like that, I would do the same thing for him. So this book just leaves me with a lot to think about. And I do think that the comparison to the Stepford Wives really holds up. They are very similar books. I think you could read both of them and get a pretty good idea of American history and kind of where we're at now concerning gender stereotypes, the way we talk about sex and gender. All of this said, I really enjoyed the book. I think the writing was good. I enjoyed the audiobook. I'd like to pick up another couple of Chandler Baker's books. There's one that I know of, The Whisper Network, which was on like my list of things that I want to read, and I just never ended up picking it up, so I might pick it up now. I don't know if she has any other books out that she's written. But that is gonna be it for me for this review. So please like, subscribe, be my friend on social media. I will catch all of you in my next video. Bye, friends.